In Cuba, polling stations closed in the parliamentary elections. Vote counting is underway. In Russia, President Biden reported on the announcement of Atlantic Treaty Organization's intentions to create a new axis. And in Israel, demonstrations against the government's judicial reform continue to grow. Thousands took to the streets for the 12th consecutive week. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Sunday, polls closed at 7 p.m. local time in Cuba's parliamentary elections. Vote counting is underway and final results are expected to be announced in the coming days. Over 8 million people were called to the polls. Cubans voted to elect 470 deputies to the National Assembly of People's Power, who will lead from the legislature the destinies of the country for a term of 5 years. 175,000 primary and middle school students supported the process by safeguarding the ballot boxes. This is a sign of peace and security experienced during electoral processes in Cuba. Candidates must obtain more than 50% of the valid votes to be elected as deputies to Parliament, the 10th legislature to the National Assembly, which will be constituted next April 19th. In the fifth report of the National Electoral Council issued at 8 p.m. local time, the president of the electoral authorities, Alina Balseiro, said that by 5 p.m. local time, 5,711,397 people had exercised their right to vote, representing 7.34% of the electoral roll. The official added that the electoral day closed without any major incidents. Moreover, she declared that most of the votes have been counted, but results will be announced once all votes have been tallied. The Peruvian Public Ministry reported on Sunday that the anti-drug police and prosecutors officials seized 2.3 tons of cocaine that were going to be sent by sea to Turkey in a shipment of tiles. In a statement, the prosecutor's office said the drugs were seized in a shipment of Maholica tiles during an operation to prevent illicit drug trafficking. Meanwhile, authorities at the DP World Port Terminal added the shipment was leaving from the port of Callao, neighboring Lima, for Ankara. In this sense, the National Customs Superintendent stated the seized cargo remains in the custody of the police anti-drug division to continue with the corresponding investigations. In 2022 alone, Peruvian authorities seized more than 22 tons of cocaine, as the country, along with Bolivia, is one of the largest producers of coca leaf, the raw material for cocaine. On Sunday, the government of Honduras decided to break diplomatic relations with the island of Taiwan and recognize the principle of one China. A video published on Twitter by the Honduran Foreign Ministry shows Foreign Minister Enrique Reina signing a joint statement with his Chinese counterpart. The document expresses the willingness of Beijing and Tegucigalpa to establish diplomatic relations at the ambassadorial level in both capitals on the basis of mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, equality, reciprocal benefit, and peaceful coexistence, non-aggression and non-intervention in their respective internal affairs. The Chinese government expressed its appreciation for the decision taken by the highest Honduran authorities. After the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries, China is willing to actively carry out friendly exchanges and practical cooperation in various fields with Honduras based on mutual respect, equality, mutual benefit, and common development. Today, we take a historic step in this process of consolidating and strengthening our international relations, particularly with the Chinese people and government. We effectively recognize that there is only one China in the world, and that the government of the People's Republic of China is the only legitimate government representing all of China. The Mexican government announced last year the creation of the company Lithium MX, and just in February of this year, it announced the nationalization of the mineral due to its importance. A correspondent, Daniel Rosas, with more details.
The so-called nearshoring is considered an opportunity for Mexico, especially in lithium mining, due to its proximity to one of the largest markets in the presence of the Asian giant.
But it becomes more strategic just because we are very close to the United States and also because we already had a Chinese company here. We already had a strong company here, a Chinese company. So this decision to have modified the mining law is very important.
Although Mexico does not have the largest reserves of the mineral, it does have more than 240,000 hectares now declared a mining reserve zone on the borders with the United States. This is why lithium was nationalized, which will represent profits for the country.
Now, the state is the one that will receive the benefits of mining income, in particular if this exploitation and transformation is carried out in the future. And we insist the most important thing is the value chain.
According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the price per ton of lithium carbonate rose from $8,400 in 2020 to $85,000 by the end of 2022.
80% of the lithium in the world, of all the global lithium, is used for batteries, and fundamentally these batteries are for electric cars and also for the electronic devices that we use, cell phones, tablets, and other devices, but fundamentally for the batteries of electric cars.
Hence, the strategy of Mexico is focused on the exploitation of the mineral to be used in the manufacture of electric cars. This is evidenced by the announcement of Tesla about the installation of facilities in the country, adding to other countries such as Germany, the Netherlands, China, and Canada.
We are very excited to announce that we will be building a gigafactory in Mexico.
Unlike in South American countries where lithium is found in brine, in Mexico it is found in clay, which would mean a different extraction process, one that Tesla has apparently already patented. But Mexico seeks to keep the benefits of lithium in national hands from the outset, unlike what happened with oil in the past. For this reason, the government announced the nationalization.
So that it cannot be exploited by foreigners. Neither from Russia, nor China, nor from the United States. Oil and lithium belong to the nation. They belong to the people of Mexico.
So far, the clearest route that Mexico has to take advantage of this mineral is to supply it for the manufacture of batteries for electric cars. Until last year, the Mexican authorities only had reports of exploration and not exploitation.
Daniel Rosas, TeleSUR, Ciudad de México.
Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back from the south. Leaders of Brazil's urban social movement spent the week in the capital pressuring lawmakers and government officials to enact a new urban reform strategy. In Brasilia, our correspondent Brian Meir has more.
For the last 6 years, Brazil's working-class urban social movements have been on the streets fighting the coup and the US-backed rise of the far right. This week, their leaders joined with the National Urban Reform Forum in Brasilia to meet with government ministers and parliamentarians to present their demands for a national urban reform strategy.
President Lula is offering to support the fight for urban reform in several areas, from social housing, public health, education, and public sanitation. Articulation with the social movement is extremely important because they have important experience at the base level.
Lula has already restarted his Minha Casa Minha Vida program, which provides funding for social movements to manage their own autonomous housing construction projects that was cancelled after the 2016 coup. Now the movements are demanding that the government pass deliberative control over federal urban policy to a democratically elected volunteer citizens council, as it did during previous PT governments.
We popularized the struggle for urban reform, explaining to the people that they have rights. The right to housing, water, electricity, public health, preschools, and transportation. Everything that guarantees quality of life. We achieve these basic rights on the periphery of the big urban areas. We begin talking about the right to the city.
Brian Muir, teleSUR, Brasilia.
On Sunday, former Argentinian President Mauricio Macri ruled out his candidacy for the general election scheduled for October 22nd this year. Through a video published in his Twitter profile, the representative of the opposition alliance Together for Change confirmed his decision of not being a candidate under the pretext of enlarging the political space. According to a recent study by CB Consultores, in the 24 main municipalities of Greater Buenos Aires, the members of Everyone's Front maintained the most positive results in 13 of those territories. The most highly rated leaders of that space are Vice President Cristina Fernandez and Economy Minister Sergio Massa, who exceeded 42 percentage points in 5 territories each. On the other hand, the head of the government of the city of Buenos Aires, Horacio Rodriguez, is the opposition figure with the best results, and Macri is not the favorite in any location. The French government refused to hold dialogues with the unions on the pension reform adopted on Monday despite broad national rejection of this law. The presidential spokesman, Olivier Véran, made a rebuttal to recent declarations of President Emmanuel Macron, who ruled out negotiations on this without a parliamentary vote, which raised the discontent of the unions and the opposition. Véran specified that the executive is ready to talk with the unions about other essential issues such as the management of the end of careers, professional retraining, and the revaluation of salaries. President Macron's declarations come during the wave of violence in the mobilizations and 2 days after the 10th National Day of Protests. On Sunday, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz gathered his government coalition to try to reduce the internal tensions that, according to analysts, could lead to a crisis. Liberal psychologists and social democrats have been diverging for weeks on issues ranging from the climate to the finances of the army and infrastructure, including the budget for next year. The meeting aims to iron out differences and reduce their levels of unpopularity since, according to several polls, those who benefit from these tensions are the Conservative Opposition Party and the AfD, the extreme right. The government of Russia has denounced the intent of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to create a new axis, similar to the one established in the 1930s by the fascist regimes of Germany, Italy, and militarist Japan. Speaking to reporters, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that NATO agreed in 2022 on a new strategic concept for the development of the bloc, which establishes that the organization can develop relations with the countries of the Asia-Pacific region. President Putin said the new strategic concept of the Atlantic Alliance explicitly talks about plans to create a global NATO. Meanwhile, Putin denied that Moscow and Beijing are forging a military alliance that could threaten other countries, as NATO claims. On Sunday, the International Monetary Fund called for vigilance in the face of heightened uncertainty in the financial sector. At a forum on China's development held in Beijing, IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva said the risks to financial stability have increased due to the failure of Silicon Valley Bank in California on March the 10th. According to Georgieva, this situation generated in the United States and Europe a wave of concern in the banking sector, which had among its milestones the hasty sale of the Swiss bank Credit Suisse to its compatriot UBS. In addition to stock market losses by Deutsche Bank, Georgieva stressed that although the central bank's measures to improve access to liquidity helped to prevent panic, they have not yet succeeded in restoring calm to financial markets. teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy a Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the South. In Israel, demonstrations against the judicial reform continue to grow. The wave of protests against the measure has been going on for 12 weeks now. On Saturday, Israeli citizens mobilized again in different parts of the country against the judicial reform promoted by Benjamin Netanyahu's government, which according to the demonstrators threatens the division of powers and democracy. During this day, there were clashes with police forces and several people were reported to have been arrested. The day was marked by Defense Minister Yoav Gallant's public request for a halt to the controversial legislation, becoming the first member of Netanyahu's government to do so. Following Gallant's statements, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fired the defense minister on Sunday, triggering even more protests. The Syrian government has denounced recent U.S. military attacks in the north of the country as part of Washington's strategy to continue with the theft of Syrian oil. The Syrian foreign minister rejected the most recent U.S. attacks against some areas of the province of Deir ez-Zor in the northeast of the country registered last Thursday, which claimed the lives of at least 19 people and left several people wounded and material damages. The Syrian foreign minister also denounced that the hostile U.S. acts against Syria are in line with the attacks of the Israeli regime and terrorist groups. Finally, the foreign minister reiterated the Syrian people's demand for an immediate end to the presence of U.S. occupation troops in the country. In Pakistan, former Prime Minister Imran Khan and supporters of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party held a massive rally in Lahore amidst a judicial campaign against the former premier. The now main opposition leader held a rally after appearing in court on Friday following the suspension of an arrest warrant against him, which allowed him to end a days-long detention at his residence. According to the rally organizers, police set up multiple barricades to discourage crowds from participating in the rally, while media coverage was blocked by government pressure. The former Prime Minister was ousted by a non-confidence vote last year and has been involved in more than 100 legal cases seeking to imprison him while campaigning for early elections.
We are here to support Imran Khan, his vision. He's like one of the great leaders, and he has the vision to support us and like all the mafias in here. They have surrounded our country, so we are here to protect our country from them.
The main thing for us to be here is that we want our institutions, including our judiciary, to know that the elections that are withheld by the Election Commission, they are going to be held at no cost.
In the United States, volunteers from all over the country went to the state of Mississippi on Sunday to help victims of recent tornadoes. According to local media, volunteers showed up in the region after authorities confirmed at least 25 people dead and 55 others injured during the storm that devastated several cities. Search and recovery teams, along with volunteer groups, continue to dig through the rubble of more than 2,000 damaged or destroyed homes. The federal government declared the region an emergency area and announced the approval of funds to mitigate the damage. The United Nations has warned about the devastating situation in the countries of the Horn of Africa caused by an intense drought that is affecting mainly Ethiopia, Somalia, and Kenya. According to the latest report by the United Nations World Food Programme, the drought resulting from 5 failed rainy seasons caused the loss of approximately 4 million animals in Ethiopia, 3 million in Somalia, and 2.5 million in Kenya. The intense drought in these 3 countries has resulted in the death of at least 9.5 million livestock in total, being livestock the main source of income and nutrition for pastoral communities. The UN agency warns that food prices are abnormally high due to macroeconomic difficulties exacerbated by domestic grain shortages and global supply and fuel crisis. They also warn that if the drought continues, there will be an increase in humanitarian needs. We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.